Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to share and subscribe the channel. The stars blurred past like streaks of light, endless and cold, inside the trembling cockpit of his broken ship. Jack gritted his teeth, wrestling with the manual override. "Come on, stay with me," he muttered, sweat dripping down his brow as he fought with controls that sparked in protest. The navigation system was fried, the thrusters burned out. The only thing working now was gravity, dragging him helplessly toward the surface of an unknown planet. And then, everything went white. Jack awoke to a strange hum vibrating through the ground beneath him. His vision was hazy, his limbs stiff, but he was alive. He blinked into a twilight sky, two suns hanging low over a violet horizon. Alien flora surrounded him, towering crystal trees, glowing vines that pulsed with life, and a soft mist that smelled vaguely of citrus and electricity. "Where the hell am I?" he whispered before he could sit up. A sharp, metallic sound rang through the air. Jack turned his head just in time to see a group of armored figures descending upon him. Their armor shimmered like liquid metal, and in their hands were weapons that glowed with eerie blue energy. "Wait!" Jack began, lifting his hands. "I'm not here to fight, my ship crashed." He didn't get to finish. A jolt of energy hit him in the chest, not enough to kill but enough to knock the wind out of him. The last thing he saw before the world faded again was a pair of eyes, bright, intelligent, and glowing softly like galaxies, watching him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. When Jack awoke again, it was in a room that looked like a mix between a throne chamber and a spaceship command center. The walls pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light, and hovering orbs recorded his every breath. He was kneeling, wrists bound in glowing bands under the sharp gaze of a throne seated high above. And on that throne sat her, Princess Olivia. Her skin shimmered like starlight, an iridescent sheen that shifted color depending on how the light touched her. Her long, dark hair flowed down in waves, threaded with silver strands, and a delicate crown curved around her temples. She had a regal poise that demanded respect, but there was fire in her eyes too, rebellious, restless. She stood, her voice echoing with quiet command. "You trespass on royal land, human, and that is punishable by death on my world." Jack's head throbbed, but he looked up defiantly. "Yeah. On mine, we usually offer a cup of coffee to strangers in distress." There was a tense silence, then a faint smile tugged at Olivia's lips. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Can't it be both?" he quipped, shrugging awkwardly against his glowing cuffs. One of the guards growled and stepped forward, but Olivia raised her hand sharply, her gaze never left Jack's. "What is your purpose here?" "Crash landing." "I didn't exactly mean to drop in on your kingdom," Jack said, wincing slightly. "Ship's wrecked, I didn't even know this planet existed." She descended the stairs of her throne slowly, each step deliberate, each movement graceful. She circled Jack like a panther, assessing prey. "And yet you fell from the stars alone, no fleet, no weapons." "Sounds like a poor invasion plan, huh?" he muttered. She stopped in front of him, tilting her head for a moment. She said nothing, just stared. Jack tried not to squirm under her gaze, but it wasn't her power that unnerved him, it was something else. She looked at him not as a prisoner, but as if he were some puzzle she couldn't quite solve. Finally, she spoke again. "Place him in containment." "No harm yet, I want to speak with him again." The guard saluted and moved in, as Jack was led away. He couldn't help but glance back over his shoulder at the alien princess. She was still watching him and, for a split second, her expression shifted, not cold, not regal, but curious, almost human. Jack smiled to himself even as the cell doors closed behind him. "Well," he muttered to the empty room, "he did not like me." The containment cell wasn't as grim as Jack expected. Soft light radiated from the curved walls, and the air smelled faintly of lavender and something metallic. There was a sleeping platform, food unlike anything he'd seen, translucent cubes that shimmered, and a hovering orb that observed his every move. He paced for a while, rubbing the back of his neck. First contact, he muttered. And I get thrown in space jail. Figures. Hours passed, or maybe more. Time felt slippery here. He was just about to lie down when the door hissed open. 2 guards flanked the entrance, but standing between them, wearing a long gown of flowing dark blue that swirled with stars, was Princess Olivia. Jack straightened. Back for round 2. She didn't smile, but her expression wasn't cold either, more thoughtful. You speak as though you've already won, she said, stepping inside. The guards remained outside, the door sealed behind her. Jack raised an eyebrow. Well, I'm still alive, I'll take that as a personal victory. She walked slowly around the room, her fingers brushing along the edge of the glowing walls. No one has spoken to me like that in years. You mock authority, I mock death threats, Jack replied. It's a bad habit, helps with the stress. She paused. Her gaze drifted to him, softening slightly. You're different from what I was taught about humans. Jack tilted his head. What were you taught? Olivia turned, facing him fully. Now that your kind is greedy, chaotic, driven by emotion, dangerous in diplomacy, prone to war. Jack shrugged. Can't say they were totally wrong, but we're not all the same. Some of us crash land on royal planets and try not to get vaporized. She let out a breath, almost a laugh, almost, then something shifted in her expression, and she looked away. You arrived at a complicated time. Jack stepped closer, cautious. Complicated, how? She hesitated for a long moment, then, as if deciding it no longer mattered, she spoke. There is pressure on me to marry. Jack blinked. Okay, bit of a pivot in conversation, but go on. Olivia's tone was sharp but tinged with frustration, not at him, but at something far bigger. Royal protocol demands I unite with a suitor from one of the 3 noble houses to ensure peace. The throne is unstable, my father passed before choosing a successor. They want me to be the glue that holds this fragile empire together. Jack leaned against the wall, arms folded. And you don't want that? She looked at him, then really looked. Would you marry someone you don't love just to please people who treat you like a symbol? Jack was quiet for a moment. I've done a lot of things for other people, lost time, opportunities, even people I cared about. But marriage, he shook his head. Nah, that should be yours, just yours. Her eyes lingered on him, searching. What if I had no choice? Jack offered a dry smile. Then maybe you need to make one. No one expects. Olivia stepped closer, studying him like he was some strange artifact washed up from a storm. Her voice softened. You are alone. No rank, no crown, no political value, and yet your words carry weight. It's a gift. Jack said with a half smirk, some say it's charm, others call it sarcasm. That almost smile tugged at her lips again, then she turned, gathering her poise like a cloak. You are still a guest here, and your future is uncertain. Jack met her gaze. So is yours. That made her pause in the doorway. You should rest, she said, though her voice wavered slightly. We'll speak again soon. Looking forward to it, Princess, he replied, his voice softer now, less cocky, as the door slid shut behind her. Jack exhaled and leaned against the wall. Something about her lingered in his mind, not just the alien beauty but the way her words carried sorrow beneath their strength. She was a ruler, a prisoner, and a woman all at once, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he wanted to know what lay beneath all 3. The stars blinked above the palace like scattered diamonds, cold, endless, watching. Jack sat on the edge of a quiet balcony high above the bioluminescent jungle below. The cell was no longer locked, and guards no longer followed his every move. Olivia had made that clear, he didn't know exactly why she'd loosened the leash, but he had his suspicions. He was just finishing a synthetic drink when he heard the unmistakable swish of her long gown behind him. You found my favorite spot. Olivia's voice was soft, tinged with surprise. Jack turned slightly. Didn't mean to intrude, I just needed air. She stepped beside him, her expression unreadable as she leaned on the rail. The breeze stirred strands of her silver-black hair. Jack couldn't help but glance sideways at her. She looked less like a ruler and more like a woman, tired, thoughtful, with something behind her eyes always turning. How long do you have before the suitor parade starts? He asked, trying to make light of it. She smirked faintly. They arrive in the morning. There will be a grand feast, speeches staged, sword duels. Her voice grew tight, like peacocks fighting for the throne. Sounds exhausting, it is. She paused. And irrelevant. Jack raised an eyebrow. Why is that? She didn't answer, not right away. Before she could speak again, the balcony shuddered violently, the ground trembled somewhere deeper in the palace, and an explosion ripped through the still night. Boom! Flames licked the sky in the distance. Shouts echoed, sirens blared in a language Jack didn't understand, but chaos was universal. Olivia spun, already speaking into a glowing crystal on her wrist. Report, what just happened? Static, then a voice crackled, breach on the eastern wing. Intruders, unknown origin, elite forces on their way. Jack stood instantly. I'm going with you. No, stay here. It's safer. Exactly why I'm not letting you go alone. Their eyes locked, hers narrowed in defiance, his steady with conviction. Something passed between them then, not words, but something deeper. Trust, perhaps. She nodded once, and they moved through halls of ancient stone and humming tech, a blur of rushing guards, flickering lights, and the stench of smoke. The intruders had breached the palace perimeter, blasters tearing through walls and royal defenses. They reached the eastern chamber just as a blast shook the columns apart. Jack grabbed Olivia by the waist and dove with her behind a pillar as debris rained down. You okay? He shouted over the din. She nodded, chest heaving, her gown was torn at the hem, her face flushed, furious, alive. She peeked around the rubble. Mercenaries, paid not from any royal house, someone wants you off the throne. Or married before I can choose differently. Jack clenched his jaw. That someone, whoever they were, didn't just want to control you. They wanted to erase your will entirely. I didn't even think, I just acted. He darted forward, grabbing a fallen plasma staff from a downed guard. I'll distract them, you go for the override panel. Lock them in. That's suicide, you're the queen, they need you. Before she could protest, he leapt over the wreckage, charging toward the corridor where masked attackers were storming through. Blaster fire erupted, Jack ducked and rolled, the staff glowing, swinging hard and wild, raw but effective. And Olivia, she ran. She reached the override panel, hands flying across the controls, hair whipping in the wind from the ruptured wall. The gates slammed shut, reinforced titanium, and the mercenaries were trapped. Sirens faded as reinforcements arrived. Jack collapsed behind a pillar, breathing hard, burned along one arm but smiling. And then Olivia was there, falling to her knees beside him, checking his wound with trembling hands. You fool, she whispered. You reckless, idiotic, brave man. Jack winced. Did we win? She laughed, a real laugh this time. Yes, yes we did. Their faces were inches apart. Dust and blood clung to their skin. Something crackled in the air between them, not danger, not adrenaline, but something warmer. You could have died, she whispered. You're worth it, Jack said, voice low. She stared at him, eyes wide, unsure. He expected her to pull away, to retreat behind protocol or duty, but she didn't. Instead, Olivia leaned in slowly, deliberately, and kissed him, soft, fierce, like a decision. The kiss still burned on Olivia's lips long after the battle smoke had cleared. She sat alone in her royal chamber, the silver moonlight pouring through the high windows, catching on the strands of her disheveled hair. Her elegant robe, torn from the night's chaos, had been replaced with something softer, simpler, yet nothing calmed the storm inside her. What have I done? The question echoed over and over again. Kissing a human and an outsider, not just that, but feeling something undeniable, something real. There had been no duty in it, no strategy, no political calculation, just him, Jack. He hadn't even been born on her world, he wasn't of noble blood, held no titles, no legacy. And yet, when everything exploded, literally and figuratively, he had stood beside her, protected her, believed in her, in ways no suitor from the royal courts had. She looked toward the far side of her chamber, where her guards had been dismissed, and her heart leapt when she saw him, a familiar figure leaning casually against the balcony column. "You always just sneak into a royal's bedroom," Olivia said, a faint smile playing at her lips. Jack shrugged, arms crossed, his shirt ripped and his arm bandaged from the earlier battle. "Just the rooms with balconies and breathtaking views." She rolled her eyes and stood, crossing the room slowly. Her steps were quieter tonight, more careful, as if she moved too quickly the moment might shatter. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but without conviction. "Then tell me to leave," he said simply. Silence. Neither moved. Olivia's gaze dropped to the floor, her voice softer now. "Jack, what happened earlier, I shouldn't have, don't do that." He interrupted gently, stepping closer. "Don't pretend it didn't mean anything." Her throat tightened. "It's not that it meant too much, it was bare and exposed." "You're a queen," he said, voice steady, "and I'm just some earthborn soldier who crash-landed in your orbit." She met his eyes. "Don't reduce yourself like that." Jack looked at her, really looked, and for once he wasn't just teasing or deflecting. "Then tell me, what does this kiss mean? Because if I'm just a passing fascination to you, I need to know, I can't be a game." Olivia's breath caught. "You're not a game, Jack," she said, stepping close enough to touch him, though she didn't. "You're the only person who sees me, not the crown, not the duty, not the throne, just me." He tilted his head, a whisper of a smile returning. "And do you see me?" "Yes," her voice broke slightly. "You're reckless and irritating, but you're also brave and kind, and stubborn in all the ways that make me feel safe and free at the same time." A long pause passed between them as their fingers brushed. "If we do this," she whispered, "there will be consequences. The council will never allow it, they'll see it as betrayal, choosing a human over their carefully arranged politics." Jack reached for her hand and held it gently. "Let them come. I fought worse for far less." Olivia exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing for the first time that night. For a moment, she didn't feel like a princess or a ruler, she just felt like a woman, standing in the arms of someone who made the world seem quiet. But even as she allowed herself that moment, she knew time was short. A knock echoed at the chamber door. "Your Majesty, come." The voice of her chief advisor came through the wood. "The suitors await your presence in the throne hall. The ceremony begins at dawn." She tensed, reality flooding back in. Jack gave her a look, a half grin, half grim. "Guess this fairy tale's on pause." Olivia nodded, pulling her hand back with reluctance, "Not forever." Jack turned toward the balcony, but just before he stepped into the night, she called out, "Jack." He turned. "I don't want to be a queen without you." And just like that, a vow passed between them, unspoken but real, not of crowns, but of hearts. The golden chamber of the High Council pulsed with tension. Crystal chandeliers blazed overhead, and rows of advisors, nobles, and alien dignitaries lined the curved walls. On the central platform, Queen Olivia stood in full ceremonial attire, silk robes embroidered with her house's sigil, her crown gleaming under the lights. Yet beneath the regal exterior, her heart beat erratically. She wasn't nervous because of the ceremony, she was terrified of what she was about to do. To her left stood the chosen suitor, Lord Kale, tall and expressionless, a political match forged in convenience and power. Around them, the council murmured with restrained excitement. A union between Olivia and Kale would solidify alliances, it would guarantee peace between sectors, it was the logical choice. But Olivia wasn't here to be logical. The Grand Chancellor raised his hand to signal silence. Queen Olivia of all Eris, he announced in a deep, echoing voice, do you accept this joining of houses, this union for the good of your people? A pause. The chamber waited. Olivia glanced across the room, searching, hoping, and then she saw him. Jack was at the far edge, tucked in the shadows, not in ceremonial garb, but in his battle uniform, bruised, raw, and very real. He hadn't been invited, he'd come anyway. Their eyes locked, her pulse steadied. She turned back to the Chancellor and spoke clearly, no. A ripple of confusion moved through the council. I do not accept, she gasped. A few stood in protest, Kale's brow twitched. The Chancellor blinked. Your Majesty, this match has been sanctified, it was decreed. Then I undecree it, Olivia said, her voice sharper now. Because I am not a piece to be moved on your board, I am not a symbol to trade for peace. She stepped down from the platform, each footfall echoing in the stunned silence. I am a woman and a queen, and I will not marry for diplomacy. Kale took a step forward, his voice low and firm. You would risk war for love. She turned to him, fierce and unflinching. No, I would risk war for freedom, for the right to choose my life, and I choose him. The chamber fell into chaos, voices rose, some angry, some astonished. The Chancellor called for order, but Olivia ignored them all. She walked past the nobles, past the foreign lords, straight toward Jack. He stepped forward, confused, cautious. Olivia, what are you doing? I told you, I didn't want to be a queen without you, she said, grabbing his hand. I meant it. They'll try to take your throne, let them. He searched her eyes, and for a split second he looked like he might pull away, but then he smiled, soft and unguarded. You're insane, possibly. And then she kissed him right there in front of the entire court, a scandal, a revolution, a declaration. When she pulled back, her voice dropped to a whisper that only he could hear, stand with me, Jack, not as a soldier, not as a servant, but as my equal. He nodded, overcome. Always. Moments later, the Chancellor's voice cut through the noise, this action will not be accepted. The Council demands a formal trial, she has defied centuries of law. Then the law must change, Olivia replied coldly, stepping forward again. Or it will fall with the dust of broken crowns. Her gaze swept the room. If any here believe I am unfit to rule because I have chosen love over politics, speak now, challenge me openly. No one moved, no one dared. They saw her then, not as a puppet queen or delicate princess, but as a force, a fire, a woman who would burn an empire before letting it cage her heart. She turned once more to Jack, lacing her fingers in his. This is only the beginning, and with you beside me. She walked from the chamber not in retreat but in power. Behind them, the pillars of tradition trembled, the sky of Alice had never shone so brightly. Twin moons hovered like lanterns, casting soft light over the mountain spires and the crystalline lake below. The ancient gardens once closed to the public were now open and blooming, an explosion of color, music, and light. Lanterns drifted in the air like fireflies, the scent of wildflowers mingled with the hum of gentle alien flutes. It was the night of Queen Olivia's wedding, and she was marrying for love. Not a soul in the realm had expected it to happen, not after her defiance in the court, not after the long months of political uproar and uncertain diplomacy. But time had a way of softening hearts, even the council, once rigid and cold, had begun to change under Olivia's reign, one law at a time, one truth at a time. Now the people were gathered not to protest, but to celebrate. Olivia stood at the altar, built of starless and roots from the world tree. Dressed not in a royal gown but in something simpler, flowing silk the color of dawn, with a golden ribbon wrapped around her wrist, her crown was absent and her hair was down, kissed by moonlight. She didn't need a crown tonight, she had Jack. He stood across from her, impossibly handsome in ceremonial robes that shimmered like the night sky, stitched by alien hands but carrying Earth's touch, raw, bold, a little rugged. His hand trembled slightly as he took hers, but his eyes never wavered. "I never thought I'd be the one wearing this," he whispered, glancing at the ceremonial ring of the bond etched with both their names, woven into the metal. "Neither did I," Olivia said softly, smiling. "But you wear it well." The officiant, a wise elder whose voice carried like wine through trees, stepped forward. "You stand here not as ruler and subject, not as alien and human, but as two souls joined by fire, trial, and choice." He looked between them, ancient eyes crinkling with quiet joy. "Do you, Jack of Earth, take Olivia of Eris as your bond mate, your partner in this life and beyond?" Jack didn't hesitate. "With all I am, yes." "And do you, Olivia, take Jack, not as a symbol, but as the one who saw you, challenged you, and stood beside you?" "With all my heart," Olivia said, her voice steady and luminous, "yes."